90%. Yes, that's the magic number. According to experts, 90% of what we consume all over the world is delivered to us via shipping. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime, where we bring you up to speed on happenings in the maritime domain. My name is Ubong Isian, and I will be your guide on this voyage.
This is Princess Vicky Astrop, the Executive Vice Chairman, CEO, ENL Consortium Limited, and you are watching Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. In case you're just joining us, this is still Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. On today's episode, we begin by taking you through the Director General's diary. What has the captain of the Nimasa ship, Dr. Bashir Jamo, been up to in the past week? You'll get to find out and get to appreciate all that the agency is doing to keep the maritime industry moving. From there, we'll continue our outlook into 2021. This time round, a conversation with the Executive Director, Cabotage, Engineer Victor Oche, telling us what the Cabotage Directorate of Nimasa is poised to deliver on, in line with the Nimasa Performance Tripod, the triple S of maritime safety, maritime security, and shipping development. We also have a new segment for you today called Safety Brief, where Dr. Awa Bamanga of our Maritime Environment Management Department walks us through the consequences of allowing so much plastics to litter our marine environment. So, as we say at Nimasa, anchors away.
Nimasa and the police synergize to address crimes in our waters. In a continuous effort to strengthen the relationship between the Nigerian police and the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency Nimasa, the Assistant Inspector General of Police in charge of Zone 2, AIG Ahmed Ileyasu, made a courtesy visit to the DG of Nimasa, Dr. Bashir Jamo, in his office at the agency's headquarters.
As usual, you remember last year I was with the Inspector General of Police, and as a result of the meeting with the Inspector General of Police, we had a number of interaction with his team. The teams include all the DIGs and AIGs at the headquarters level. And at that time, it was the prime time we were trying to see the synergy and collaboration renewal between the agency and other law enforcement agencies has been renewed to ensure that the internal safety and security of our maritime domain is being harnessed. And what we achieved critically in that meeting with the Inspector General of Police was the revival of the interface between the Nigerian police in charge of MOPOL and the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. And in so doing, we seek to see the interface between our C4I that is being created to collect data and information with regards to maritime security, interface with the police similar infrastructure called I-247, and which we realized that. And as of today, we have the International Joint Industry Working Group and the Nigerian police. They are heavily represented there. So what you are seeing now is the AIG in charge of the Western Zone coming here to visit us so that we can reinvigorate such relationship in terms of policing our own water, ensuring calmness of our own waters, the issue of the framework, legal framework signed by Mr. President in June 2019, the implementation of the SPOMO Act, and then the prosecution of the officers we arrested. As you are aware, those criminals that we arrested so far, especially in Lagos, we still have 10 at the Lagos High Court. And as you know, the only institute is aligned with the responsibility of arresting and prosecuting any criminal, be it in the water or on the land. They are the Nigerian police, so that we can re-strategize, discuss, renew the effort that we are putting in place to ensure that we have a very calm year 2021 in our own maritime domain.
In his response, the AIG thanked the DG for his warm reception and assured him that the Nigerian police will continue to strive in its efforts to reduce and eliminate criminality, be it on land or on water.
That we are harnessing all critical assets with regards to institutions and organizations to ensure the safety and security of our environment. It is in line with this direction of the Inspector General of Police and the federal government, that is in terms of community policing, as the best formula to solve some of the nagging security or emerging security issues, that I decided to give you this very important and remarkable visit. I most appreciate your professional as well as in-depth knowledge of best practices in terms of analyzing issues that are germane to new patterns and emerging patterns of crime and criminality. And I believe this collaboration and synergy in terms of my operational mandate in Zone 2 is a continuous one. We will continue to work in line with this mandate of national community policing drive as a critical stakeholder in the cabotage and maritime industry to secure our environment and harness all critical intelligence assets to see that we work hand in hand. This is the best time whereby all security agencies, all critical stakeholder communities, traditional rulers, and all the media and all those involved will come together and harness our resources together to ensure the safety and security of our environment.
Can you request the Commander Maritime Guard Command to invite the DG to commence the ceremony of the shipping of the stripes? Sir.
Okay.
Shipping of stripes as DG of Nimasa decorates Navy Captain Mahmood Hamanyaro of the Maritime Guard Command. In a short ceremony that has been a long tradition of the Nigerian Navy, where the officers are shipped with a strong drink into the next rank as a way of ushering them to further responsibilities in the Nigerian Navy. A member of the Nimasa's Maritime Guard Command, Commander Mahmood Hamanyaro, was recently decorated with his new rank, having been promoted to Navy Captain. Navy Captain Mahmood Hamanyaro was commissioned in 2001 as a sub-lieutenant after graduating from the Nigerian Defense Academy into the Nigerian Navy. He has attended several military courses both locally and internationally and has worked in several naval formations and ships. In his congratulatory charge, the DG of Nimasa, Dr. Bashir Jamo, admonished him to be more committed to justify his promotion.
You are no longer the officer we used to know. So the greater sacrifice, loyalty, in terms of discharge of your duties and responsibility has to be your watchword. You have to be ups and doing in terms of grooming younger ones to reach where you are today. Some of your colleagues that you start this journey with, they are no longer alive. Some of them, they have been retired. Some of them even dismissed from the service. Some of them, they are still on certain ranks, maybe 2 ranks below that. But today, God willing, you have been uplifted to the commander. On behalf of the governing board, executive management of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, and the entire staff, we want to join you in, congratulating you again for reaching this type of rank. And we wish you all the best in your future endeavor. Thank you very much.
He was decorated by the DG Nimasa, ably assisted by the Commander Maritime Guard Command Commodore Anedi Ibok, in the presence of executive directors and some of his Maritime Guard colleagues. In his response, the newly promoted officer thanks the President and Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces, President Muhammadu Buhari, the Chief of Naval Staff, DG of Nimasa, and his superiors for approving his promotion, and promised to work hard to be more committed and dedicated to his work and to the nation.
The year 2020 was a very challenging year. We had the COVID pandemic. It brought up a lot of challenges, particularly with crew change, issues of crew change. But the interesting thing that in spite of the pandemic, the seafarers were still working. And that gave rise to the point where IMO had to come out to the world to recognize seafarers as essential workers. And they are there because right in the heart of the pandemic, they were right on the seas, ensuring that those logistic movements, drugs, and a whole lot of human endeavors were still moving up and down. And Nigeria was not an exception. We were also caught in that battle. But that also gave rise to challenges such as crew members who wanted to disembark the vessels and go back to their countries by flight. International airspace was shut down, and of course they were stranded. But there were evacuation flights that came on board, and we had to find ways to get them out, keep them within a time space to be isolated, and after that allow them to go, while we're able to also use same method to have them embark on board the vessels. These were the various challenges that we had, particularly with the side of maritime labor. This also affected dock workers who were exposed to the risk of the haulages coming from these vessels that kept on moving from one country to the other. Stopping calling at different ports. These were not times for you to be able to stop anybody. So we had to designate them as essential workers because there was no way other than to celebrate them in a very special way, because in spite of all the troubles that we went on, seafarers had to keep working, dock workers had to keep working, and because the ports were never shut for one day. So I must commend them, seafarers and our dock workers, for all they have done in ensuring that we had a stable economy, ensuring that the world did not come to a stop. Assuming, could you picture what it would have looked like if, when they shut down the international airspace, they also shut down the international shipping lines? The whole world would have come stranded. And so you need to give it to the maritime industry that in the face of all odds, they stood still and faced it just like the rough seas that they meet. They still weathered the storm and they are still there. Whatever affects the movement of the vessels also affects cabotage. Coastal waters, because you had smaller vessels running with lower GRTs, is not as adverse as it was with those of the seafarers and the dock workers. But in a resume, 2020 was a very challenging year owing to the pandemic, which we'll have to adapt our new living style to. And so in dealing with the new normal, how it affects the maritime domain, it may be a little bit slower, but things would naturally pick up after now. So we're learning to ensure people come with their personal protective. We have personal protective equipment, maxed up, ensure that they are well sanitized, their hands and the environments are sanitized. These are the little things we do just to ensure that the standard protocols are followed so that we don't endanger the lives of our seafarers and our dock workers as well. So going forward, 2021, by the grace of God, we intend to improve on those protocols which we have already established and also ensure that we tweak one or two ways of doing things which are the standard requirements to ensure that we have the maritime domain will be as safe as possible while trying still maximizing the gains we have made. No doubt it poses challenges of those seafarers who probably not qualified to be where they are. We still have to go all out and do enforcement to ensure that these persons are fished out so people don't take advantage of the pandemic and violate extant rules and laws which we already have. These are things we need to deal with. So we are coming to all that, and that's part of what we are dealing with in 2020. So following those protocols and maintaining them will help us a great deal. On the cabotage side, there are new regimes which we want to really want to come out enforcing and ensuring that we save the jobs of Nigerians who are seafarers or who have things to do in the maritime domain, those functions that can be performed by Nigerians, not those jobs being outsourced to foreign flagged vessels. So we also need to increase our flag and our gross tonnages, which we need to deal with locally. This is our outlook for 2021 to ensure that we give a boost to the maritime domain, particularly in this directorate.
Hello and welcome back. It's still Nimasa this week, the voice of maritime. Joining me now is Dr. Awal Bamanga. Dr. Awal Bamanga is with the Marine Environment Management Department of Nimasa. Dr. Bamanga, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So this is the safety brief segment of the program, and Dr. Bamanga will be explaining to us what happens typically in the marine environment when we use items such as these, items in plastics in particular. So Dr. Bamanga, most of us use various items packaged in plastic containers. Eventually, when we dispose of these items, depending on how we dispose of them, a lot of these items end up in the marine environment, in our oceans, in our waters. What happens when an empty plastic bottle such as this ends up in the marine environment?
Thank you very much. What makes marine litter dangerous is because of the plastics, and the plastics are divided into two. We have the microplastic, which is in this form. When it gets into the environment and get disintegrated into smaller pieces, it becomes microplastic. But what makes it more dangerous, both macroplastic and microplastic, is that it is non-biodegradable. It doesn't easily get degraded, so it remains in the ecosystem, whereby affects the marine biodiversity, including fish that we consume. Because the fish, in the process of looking for their food, they ingest this plastic into their body system, which interferes with their enzymatic activities and cause health implications. Now, if it is in a high concentration, we consume fish because it will be in a bioavailable state in the ecosystem. We consume fish, then it will now come back to our own body system through biomagnification. Then it's one of the source of cancer. And that's what makes macroplastic dangerous. Now, as part of the emerging issues now, marine litter becomes so dangerous because of these plastic issues. And that's why the whole focus of the entire world is on this microplastic. And that is why the United Nations now introduced the SDG 13 and SDG 14, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDG 13 is on climate change, while the SDG 14 is on life below the sea. While the climate change is very important in this issue is because it is in flooding. And don't forget, this thing is being manufactured on land, but it ends up into the marine environment when there's sea rise, when there's climate change. And that is why we are advocating for awareness campaign on how we can dispose these plastics. That is number one. Two, there's also advocating on the circular economy. When you manufacture this plastic, it needs to be recycled. In the first place, it will not get into the ocean to cause this havoc and becomes toxic to the marine environment as well as marine biodiversity, which will affect the economic activities, affects the ecology, and affects the health. This is the consequence emanating from the macroplastic and microplastic in our oceans.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bamanga. So, in summary, when we fail to dispose plastics properly, 90% of the time, these plastics end up in our waters. Ultimately, they end up on our dining table as the fish that we eat. But this time round, unhealthy. So let's all share responsibility to protect our marine environment by doing the right things in terms of how we dispose plastics. Nimasa this week. We'll be right back. This is where we read you the tweet from the Director General of Nimasa, Dr. Bashir Jamo, from his Twitter handle @Jamo Bashir. This time round, he's talking about maritime security, undoubtedly the most important issue to be resolved to enable our maritime domain succeed. And he says, we are now developing a strategy in partnership with the IMO, that's the International Maritime Organization, where we now have for the first time a national maritime security strategy that will encompass all the agencies of government to come together and ensure that we fight the common enemy called piracy. As always, you can continue this conversation with the DG at his Twitter handle @Jamo Bashir. Also remember to follow Nimasa across all of our official social media handles as displayed on your screen. And of course, the Nimasa website, where there's lots of information and updates as to what the agency is dealing with on a week-by-week basis.
Odoye Diri of Bayelsa State, and you are watching Nimasa This Week.
I hope you found today's episode of the program instructive, educative, and useful, especially for those of you out there seeking a career in maritime or exploring business opportunities in the Nigerian shipping domain. Until I see you next time, remember, you can never discover new oceans until you have summoned the courage to lose sight of the shores. We at Nimasa will continue to remain the voice of maritime. My name is Ubongisien. I'll see you next time.